Issue 16. Hey, Sally finally has the right coloring! I'd grown a little fond of the way she looked before, but this looks way better. I feel like I've entered a new era in the early Sonic comic. We start out with the Freedom Fighters celebrating Sonic defeating Robotnik off screen, and I'm sure even the target audience for this was suspicious because there's no way he would have defeated the major villain off screen. That'd be terrible writing even by Sonic standards. There's a charming moment where after taking a picture of his friends, Rotor looks like he's covered in soot or something because he used too much flash powder. I like how Antoine complains about only Sonic getting the credit for taking out Eggman, when he wouldn't have made it this far without the rest of them. But why is it only him? Why did Rotor only credit him in the first place? They're a team. Plus they're all heroes, they're all goody-goody. Like, shouldn't he be saying, "We beat Robotnik"? Like saying, "We did it"? Especially since he's taking a team photo of all of them, not just Sonic. I really like how Antoine asks, where do we go from here? That's a very good question. One that most characters in a Freedom Fighter situation don't bother to ask. Deposing Robotnik is one thing, but he's rebuilt the entire world's governmental systems to be run by him. Wouldn't getting rid of him leave a massive power vacuum that would throw the entire planet into war as people scramble for power in every country? You could put Princess Sally in charge to replace him, and I guess their plan would be to make democracy and shit happen as soon as they can rather than keeping her in charge of everything. But wouldn't she, or anybody else ever, get used to all that power and be reluctant to relinquish it? She wouldn't be as bad as Eggman. She'd be like an environmentalist and stuff, but still. Even after getting rid of Robotnik, there would still be a lot of work for them to do. And Sally would have to at least be okay at running the world in the meantime. She might have to worry about people trying to depose her. 6 months later, or so it seems. Okay, I guess I should be happy that even the comic itself is acknowledging that the readers have good reason to be suspicious of this, instead of pointlessly trying to keep up the suspense. Especially since we also cut to Sonic getting married to Sally at a ridiculously young age. Yep, definitely bullshit. I like how they actually remember that Antoine was still bitter about Sally liking Sonic instead of him at this point, bringing back the rivalry between him and Sonic. Commenter. So Antoine came from a wealthy background and looks down on Sonic from that. I mean, I always imagined that he had a soldier for a father and that's how he got his military status from nepotism, but he's actually rich. If we saw more of this side of Antoine, if he was more open about this, I'd understand why he was mistreated so much, because I'd have a much better reason to hate him and want his friends to hate him. But instead, he usually just keeps these kinds of thoughts to himself, making the bullying he suffers feel undeserved and creepy. As you probably expected, this is all simulation of Robotnik's, making the Freedom Fighters have good dreams to prevent them from bothering him. Because just killing them while they're vulnerable would make too much sense. Seriously, it isn't like Robotnik to try to make them happy like this, instead of just turning them into robots. It's an interesting story, but its whole premise is based on a plot hole. Robotnik explains that his plan had been to lure the Freedom Fighters to a place with a free chili dog at 2 p.m. sign, fill the area with sleeping gas that somehow affected all the Freedom Fighters the same way, despite them having varying body masses. And that was it. At least if Krabney actually acknowledges how stupid Robotnik's being, so the writers aren't being totally non-self-aware. And the comic tries to pass this off as Robotnik being sadistic, because letting someone live their own paradise is sadistic. I guess the point is that he wants to wake them up after he's long since taken over the world, just to torment them. But it'd make more sense and be smarter for genius for him to just kill them. Why aren't the Freedom Fighters drowning from their mouths being open underwater and the water thus getting into their lungs and thus their bloodstream? They didn't bother to draw oxygen masks over them to have it make more sense. Of course, right away after Eggman leaves the room, the virtual reality starts glitching out, making Sonic and Sally suspicious. Because, you know, programming the virtual reality machine to make it impossible for everyone in it to be suspicious of it would be too hard for someone who built a time machine. I think what's happening here is that the virtual reality machine is programmed to grant the wishes of everyone in it. But now, Antoine's wish to marry Sally is conflicting with Sonic's wish to marry Sally. So Sonic is suddenly holding a broom like a servant while Antoine is the one marrying her. Maybe Antoine's not suspicious at first because he thinks he's just daydreaming. Unfortunately, the machine breaking down from this logical conflict of wishes is very quickly abandoned in favor of just random stuff happening for no reason. I guess all this stuff happens because of the first wish conflict. Sonic gets sent through a hole in the sky, and Antoine comments on melting clocks, while Sally's suddenly in a hole in the floor. Why would any of them want this to happen? They don't, so why is the machine doing this? And then Uncle Chuck shows up in his more lazy, non-robot-sized form and tells Sonic that the world is virtual reality. Why the hell didn't Eggman program this to not be possible? And after Sonic is warped through water to a hill where he talks to Chuck in an easy answer stall, he wonders if Chuck is just a simulation. Why would the virtual reality machine have a machine programmed into its virtual world that would let someone see what Robotnik's doing in the real world and wake himself up and his friends? This goes beyond glitches. Sonic realistically hesitates a bit at losing his paradise before deciding to make the war machine to reverse the course. Wait, why is Sally happy? Wasn't she suspicious earlier at suddenly being forced to marry Antoine? If the machine brainwashed her into being fine with it, why didn't it do the same for Sonic to remove his suspicion? It makes sense that Alan Cal or whatever from Mitchell 2 are here, because Sonic's in a situation where his world is being all weird, falling apart, which would remind him of the wacky dimension there. These aren't the real Alan Cal, just Sonic's memories of them. After summoning some cool glasses to give off the controlling virtual reality vibe more. Not really sure why Eggman has this line, but whatever. Sonic bluffs Eggman into freeing the Freedom Fighters by sending Eggman's own war machines to the building where he's in. It probably was a bluff, since if the war machines got close enough, they would have probably ended up killing the Freedom Fighters while damaging the building. Maybe Sonic didn't think of that. He then makes the war machines destroy each other, and gets his friends out of there. Sally must not have very much faith in him, and his loyalty, and she assumed Sonic would stay in the simulation forever. It does make sense that she figured out what was going on, since all that weird stuff started happening. The implication at the end of this, with us seeing the roboticized Uncle Chuck there cleaning up, is that somehow it really was the actual Chuck interacting with Sonic. Although since Uncle Chuck doesn't have the free will to do that at this point, this makes no sense. Now for the second story. Eggman complains that because his plans fail so much, that he thinks the head of the secret intelligence agency on the Freedom Fighters might be betraying him, and they might have inside help, and tells Snively that obviously there's a mole in the organization. Then he questions a mole on who the head of the secret intelligence is. Why wouldn't Eggman already know that? Wasn't he the one who hired that person in the first place? He's the guy who wants to be in charge of everything, so isn't he in charge of hiring? The mole instead doesn't give him a straight answer, while making me wonder why he hasn't been roboticized a long time ago. So Eggman orders him to be taken away, despite believing that the mole knows even less than he does. Why didn't the mole guy just lie? Eggman decides to try and account for the mole by deciding on its very next course of action with a basically random flip of the coin. We then cut to Coconuts underwater, drilling into a safe, trying to get an underwater bank heist done. Because, you know, there are tons of banks underwater, especially in a world without money. And then Coconuts finds a sign saying, "Look behind you," and sees some Freedom Fighters and two random Mobians ready to attack. Seriously, why is Eggman bothering to try a bank heist at all in a world where money has no value, and he can just threaten to get whatever he wants? Same goes for the art robbery. Somehow, there's still a Mobius museum of art around that Eggman hasn't destroyed for violating one of his many arbitrary rules. And he tries to get it robbed for money that has no value to him. But Sonic immediately sends Scratch into a toxic waste dump and takes back the painting. Then a note falls into Scratch's hands explaining with a misleading question mark that a guy named Who is the mole of Robotnik. The next plan of Eggman's is quite literally called Mindless Act of Terrorism. I miss the days when Sonic-related stuff wasn't too wimpy, be honest and gutsy like this, in fear of being called dark and edgy. Eggman is allowed to be threatening, you know. I guess the reason he's doing this is to intimidate the people he's already ruling over? The people he's already ruling over are all robots forced to obey him anyways. So what is the point of this? All of Eggman's plans here are pointless to him. Sonic foils his plan involving an explosive device by causing an explosion against his badniks, which are still functioning afterwards somehow. And another note is left warning Eggman about about the owls being not what they seem. Why the hell is Sonic warning Eggman about someone they're using as a vital mole and their worst enemy? Sonic may like teasing him, but this is actively detrimental to his own team. This is the heroic equivalent of a villain bragging to the heroes and revealing his own plan. Eggman blames the perfectly functional Wheel of Misfortune for the plan's failing for the sake of his own ego, I guess, and decides to take care of Sonic himself. Why the hell is Sonic going to Robotnik's casino? And for fun at that, not even for a mission. And he's going with Sally at that, who's not suspicious at all. Who is this person? This writing is just awful. Just because there's a sign that's welcoming vacationing freedom fighters, isn't it supposed to be a part of Sally's character that she always warns him that he's running into a trap and to avoid it? Not to mention it's weird of Sally to approve of gambling, and yet that's exactly what they're doing. If gambling for money that has no value at that, what's the point of winning any earnings in the first place? An owl gives Sonic a mug with the word duck on it, and despite Sonic being confused about what it means, saying he's a hedgehog, he still magically ducks in time from a projectile being thrown at him before he's even seen it at all. Sonic's lying here makes no sense. He's acting like SWATbots are always trying to kill him for Eggman. And how would he know that the SWATbot's a foreign import? He runs in a circle around it to create a static electricity field around it, just like he had taught Tails to do in his earlier moment of awesome. It's about time we finally got to see Sonic do this after we heard that he taught Tails how to do it in the first place. It's kinda weird though, since there's no carpet. So where the hell did the static electricity come from? Well, he is a magical hedgehog, but still. He then promptly becomes dizzy, which was a diabolic ex machina to arbitrarily get him hit and knocked out by a projectile. Seriously, this is absolute bullshit. How many times has Sonic run a circle at this point and not gotten dizzy? Why did he start now? Are we expected to believe the SWATbot was unaffected by being electrocuted and still able to throw something at his head? That's pretty stupid after we saw the disastrous effects that electricity had on Pseudo-Sonic. I could have sort of bought Sonic being hit by a projectile while distracted and not looking at the robot, but him getting dizzy and then attacked by a debilitated robot is just bullshit. If Sonic can get dizzy at all, why is he able to handle spinning in circles for spin dash and spin jump, then? And going through loops? Anyways, after that bullshit, Sonic wakes up attached to Eggman's Wheel of Misfortune. And Eggman says that introductions have been made, even though Sonic already knows who he is by now. I just got that this was supposed to be a James Bond parody, because of the whole Sonic's in a tuxedo and attached to a wheel thing, and Eggman introduces himself to him. Is this why the writing is so off? A parody? The target audience of this comic was probably just as confused as I was, because there's no way kids would be familiar with James Bond to the point of recognizing that it's a parody of that. I've never seen anything James Bond related in my life. Is this story non-canon because it's a parody? It felt like a pretty standard story in the comic to me, aside from Sally not warning Sonic to stay away from Eggman's casino, which was just bad writing. Then the lights get turned off and Sonic is gone, the wheel having been rigged to save him. And Eggman complains that he still doesn't know who the mole is, which I guess is supposed to make us forgive Sonic for stupidly giving him hints as to who the mole was. Wait, why didn't Eggman roboticize Harvey Who a long time ago? The whole reason this plot exists is because Eggman didn't do that. If he had roboticized him, he wouldn't have been able to help Sonic. No one on Eggman's side should have even expected him to be loyal to begin with. This story is just dumb. The first story is an interesting concept, although it never properly explains why Eggman didn't just kill the freedom fighters or roboticize them to make use of them that way. But the second story is just a pile of plot holes, with the worst part being the ridiculous diabolic ex machina of Sonic losing a fight he's proven to be able to win 1,000,000 times before. None of Eggman's random plans made sense for him to want to do when he has nothing to gain from them. And Harvey Who shouldn't have still had his free will. And Sally should have warned Sonic that the casino was a trap. And Sonic had no reason to bother going there from to begin with. I hope the terrible writing was all part of a parody of James Bond, because I'm really confused here. The entire issue was written by Kantarovic and Penders. I guess they finally realized it was redundant having two Mikes and decided to cut off Mike Tantaro's first name. And the first one was pretty good, but the second one, well, having an intriguing plot of Sonic having a mole for him against Eggman, so I love the idea of this, quickly fell apart from the lack of logic. Again, it's frustrating having two writers be credited because I don't know who's responsible for what. It'd be unfair to blame only one of the writers for the problems of either of these stories.